The forehand can often create space by stepping back, so it's rare to get jammed. This makes players feel like getting jammed on the backhand is wrong, but it's not. Today, we're going to cover serve returns. There are 3 fundamental principles for returning serves. The first principle is to use your opponent's pace. For example, against a sidespin topspin, you need to apply force close to the ball. Against sidespin topspin, get close and make contact. The same goes for sidespin backspin, my hand is very close to the ball. When pushing a short ball, I also get close to execute the shot. For a flick, you also need to be close to the ball. Therefore, no serve return technique requires a significant backswing. A backswing against a short, spinny serve will likely cause you to push it long or into the net. On a long serve, a backswing gets you jammed. On a sidespin topspin, you'll be overpowered by the combined pace and spin. So, the first golden rule of serve return is, no backswing. The second principle is timing. You must match your opponent's tempo. For example, if the opponent serves short and slow, you can't rush to contact the ball too early. Whatever their tempo is, that's your tempo. If it's slow and soft, calmly step in for your push. If they serve a long sidespin backspin, you should also use a slower tempo for your push. If their serve is fast and your tempo is slow, you'll just passively block the ball and get eaten by the spin. If their serve is fast, your push must match that fast tempo. The same applies to looping. If their serve is fast and your stroke is slow, you'll be overpowered by the spin. If the serve is fast, you must be fast, and then you'll be able to loop it effectively. However, most amateurs do the opposite. Against a short forehand serve, they rush in a panic, causing the ball to go into the net or out. It's the same for long serves. They serve fast while we react slowly. This is a classic timing mismatch. So, the second point is to match the tempo. If they're fast, you're fast. If they're slow, you're slow. For instance, against a fast sidespin topspin, you must also be fast. Matching their tempo will reduce your unforced errors. The third principle is what we call going with the spin, also known as the mirror principle. For a left side spin, is it easier to return with racket angle number 1 or number 2? This is angle number 1. And this is angle number 2. Yes, it's number 1. I'm not suggesting an extreme angle, just a slight one. Contacting the ball slightly off-center from its rearmost point is sufficient. For example, against a left side spin, I return it this way. For a sidespin topspin, I also make contact slightly on the right side of the ball. When I return a left sidespin topspin this way, the ball floats over because I've brushed the right side of the ball. You only need a slight angle, don't exaggerate the body or racket position. This mirror principle can solve 80% of your serve return problems. For instance, I'll now loop a sidespin backspin. Why did that ball go into the net? Observe the ball's trajectory. It didn't go straight down but curved sideways into the net, which proves you've been affected by the sidespin. Now, using the same brushing action but without adding power, I'll contact the ball slightly on its side as it approaches. You see, it's much easier to loop this way. Question: by making contact off-center, for example, hitting the right side of a left sidespin ball, does it neutralize the side spin? It doesn't completely neutralize it, but it significantly reduces the effect of the incoming side spin on your racket and friction. Contacting the ball from directly behind demands a higher skill level in terms of instantaneous friction, acceleration, and the direction of your force. The opposite is true for right side spin. If I contact it from directly behind, the ball will easily go into the net, and it'll go straight into the net. This type of ball often leads to errors on the forehand side. However, if I angle my racket face slightly to the left and use the same brushing technique, it becomes manageable. If I contact it from directly behind, even without applying much friction, it will still go into the net. Professional players have exceptional wrist strength. They can use explosive power from their fingers to control the ball, regardless of the spin's intensity or direction. But amateur players lack that foundation, so you must find the moment and the contact point where the spin is at its weakest. For a left side spin, you must contact the ball's right side. For a right side spin, you must contact the ball's left side. The moment of weakest spin is on the rise or in the early descending phase. either before the spin peaks or after it starts to decay. The spin is at its most potent at the peak of the bounce. The shots I just looped were all taken on the rise. I'm looping on the rise. If I use the same stroke at the peak of the bounce, I'll get jammed. You must first solve for the sidespin before addressing the topspin or backspin. So, you must find the weakest spin opportunity, the timing, on the rise or early descent, and the position, contact the right for left spin, contact the left for right spin. This principle also applies to pushing. Against a sidespin backspin, an off-center contact is more effective. A direct, straight-on push will often go into the net. Therefore, when I push, whether it's down the line or cross-court, I always make contact slightly off-center, never directly behind the ball. The same is true for the flick. For a left side spin, you must flick slightly to the right. For a right side spin, you must flick slightly to the left. Alright, next let's discuss specific techniques, starting with the principles for returning sidespin topspin. If a sidespin topspin serve is slow, you can push it. But if it's fast, you won't be able to keep it on the table. If the ball kicks up high off the bounce, it's even harder to push. Remember this principle for topspin serves. If it's fast or kicks high, the combined forces will likely make your return go long. So, the first key to returning sidespin topspin is to eliminate your backswing. Second, if the ball pops up off your racket, you need to close your racket angle to lower the trajectory. Against a high-kicking serve, a closed racket angle allows you to control the trajectory. Therefore, staying close to the ball and closing your racket angle is the primary principle. Why did these two shots go long? The reason returns go long is because the stroke is too big. So, against sidespin topspin, you must use a short, punch-like contact. Let me demonstrate. A punch-like contact is a tap, not a follow-through. A tap is a compact motion with a sharp, explosive force. It's an instantaneous action, not a full, extended stroke. While learning fundamentals requires a full motion, in a real match, you must adapt your stroke to be compact and explosive. Simply blocking the ball won't work either. So against sidespin topspin, close your racket angle, keep the motion short, stay close, and use a tapping or punching motion to hit the ball. The feeling is similar to a block. If you use a backhand rip, it's even easier. I strongly recommend amateur players learn the backhand rip, as it can handle sidespin topspin, sidespin backspin, and no-spin serves. But you must still adhere to the closed racket, no backswing principle. You can only execute a successful rip by closing your racket angle and not taking a backswing. When returning a sidespin topspin, you must vary your placement, because your opponent is likely preparing for a rally. Remember the keys to returning sidespin topspin: no backswing, stay close to the ball, close your racket angle, and keep the motion compact. Next, let's discuss sidespin backspin, which you can either push or loop. We'll cover both. For pushing, the principle is, treat a long serve like a chop, and for a short serve, stay close to the ball. When pushing a long serve, focus on maintaining distance and space. You need a longer follow-through to control the ball. When pushing a short serve, you must get your racket very close to the ball in order to execute a quick push or a sidespin push. The principles of pushing are, for long balls, use a larger motion and a slower tempo. For short balls, use a compact motion and attack at the top of the bounce to generate force. Second key point: why do players get caught by the spin when pushing? Simply put, you're making a motion, but you're only passively blocking the ball. Whether it's topspin or backspin, passive contact will cause you to misread the spin. So how do we fix this? First, during the push, your fingers must adjust based on the incoming ball. Against heavy sidespin backspin, a passive push will go into the net. In this case, you need to drop the racket head through the ball, follow through to guide it, and get under the ball more to lift it over the net. A simple chop-down motion will go into the net. You need to maintain your racket angle, but at contact, add a slight lift and follow through by brushing the bottom of the ball to get it over. Conversely, against a topspin or no-spin serve, if you push with a long follow-through, the ball will pop up. For these, you need a short, crisp motion, using your fingers to control the trajectory. It's not about blocking. It's about actively brushing down on the ball to transform a high trajectory into one that schemes the net. You must internalize these details to develop a feel for the ball. Table tennis is about touch, not just mimicking actions. To summarize the short push, if you can take it on the rise, drop it short. At the top of the bounce, push it long and fast. On the early descent, push it wide with sidespin. Following these principles will improve your consistency. Now let's talk about looping the return, a major challenge for amateurs. You're struggling because you're missing these 3 key points. The first key point is timing. When looping a serve return, you must attack the ball on the rise. Although you can loop on the early descent with more lift, if you want an aggressive, high-quality return, you have to practice taking the ball on the rise. This is difficult at first. Attacking at the top of the bounce naturally leads to more errors. Against a fast backspin serve, the incoming pace and length are more than enough to work with when you take it on the rise. Your job is simply to create the arc. Your opponent provides the power, and you provide the arc. By combining these forces, you can get the ball back on the table. If the serve is slow, the same stroke will go into the net due to lack of forward momentum. But against a fast, long backspin, you can use their pace to loop it on the rise. Don't stand too far back. If the ball is slightly short, you won't be able to generate enough power. The biggest problem with the backhand return is standing too far back and failing to connect with power, hitting the ball at the end of your stroke, which causes it to go into the net. Then you might think you didn't reach it, so you step closer, but then your backswing gets you jammed. You must understand that on the backhand, you won't always have a perfect contact point. You have to accept getting jammed sometimes. Without a backswing, get jammed in front of your body and brush the ball. When the ball rushes me, it's okay. I use that pace and brush the ball. It still goes over the net. The backhand mindset should be, if I'm jammed, I brush. It's not, if I'm jammed, I soften my grip or just block it. The forehand can often create space by stepping back, so it's rare to get jammed. This makes players feel like getting jammed on the backhand is wrong. But it's not. Every professional gets jammed. The essence of the backhand return is to use the force of the jam to brush the ball and create an arc. Many players, when jammed, react by lifting, blocking, or backing away. All of these are incorrect. When the ball jams you, be bold and meet it head-on. Brush forward and upward. The ball already has pace, it just needs you to create the lift. You must allow yourself to be jammed. Think of it as a good thing, you're borrowing their power, so you don't have to generate as much yourself. Then, you can brush boldly. Let me demonstrate. With a jamming serve, I'm using all of his power. He jams me, and I brush the ball to loop it. The third reason you miss backhand loops against backspin is that your acceleration is insufficient. For example, against his slow sidespin backspin, if I'm also slow, the ball will go over. But if he's a bit faster and I'm still slow, I'll get eaten by the spin. If the serve is slow, a slow brushing motion works. If it's faster and your stroke is still slow, you'll misread the spin. With the same motion, if your brushing speed is slower than the ball's rotation, you can't overcome the spin. The same logic applies to the forehand. Slow serve, slow loop works. Fast serve, slow loop goes into the net. So if your loops are going into the net, you need to examine your brushing speed. Not just your stroke size, racket angle, or contact point. If he's slow, you can be slow. If he's a bit faster, you get a bit faster. If he's extremely fast, your brushing speed must be extremely fast. To clarify, I don't mean a fast overall motion that lacks friction. I mean that the brushing action at the moment of contact must be fast, even if the wind-up is slow. It's a slow wind-up with a fast contact. You accelerate the brush right at the moment you touch the ball. The essence of fast brushing is the rotation of the racket head. If only your arm moves but the racket head doesn't turn, it's not effective friction. The racket head must lead the arm forward and upward. Increase your brushing speed. Simply put, you need to accelerate the racket head, for example, by snapping it quickly from the 7 o'clock position. This is what we mean by catching or gripping the ball with friction. Without racket head acceleration, no matter how fast your arm moves, the ball will go into the net. You must remember this key point. The reason it goes into the net is that your brushing speed is slower than the ball's rotational speed, which is what we call getting eaten by the spin. The reason you can't create enough friction is that although your arm is moving upward, your racket head isn't rotating, which results in the ball going into the net. It's all about the rotational speed of the racket head. It's the same for the forehand. The racket head must snap at contact, or you'll still get caught by the spin. If you just lift your elbow or arm, you'll end up with injuries and still won't be able to loop the ball consistently. What is the essence of friction? It's about who can rotate the racket face the fastest. The upper arm, the forearm, the wrist, or the fingers. The fingers are the fastest.